Hello, welcome to the Desert Blockchain Modified Daylong event on Saturday, October the 29th, 2016. My name is Jay Carpenter. It's almost 10 a.m. Arizona time, and today we're going to have basically an open line, open session. You can connect either via Google Hangouts. You can send me an email if you'd like at jcarpenter@desertblockchain.com. If you'd like to join the Google Hangout, I'd be happy to send you a link. And you can also join via dial-in. I'll be putting up the conference call dial-in information here soon. And in fact, let me read that out to you just so people will have it. Bear with me. And you are welcome to join us in person at Gangplank Chandler, which is 250 or 260 South Arizona Avenue in Chandler, Arizona. So we're going to be basically talking about various things. The conversation might not be continuous, but just a moment. I'll get you that. Okay, so the number to dial in, if you'd like to call in, is area code 641-715-0700, and the access code is 746566. And you can find that information. I'll be posting it on the desertblockchain.com, or you could go to decentralizedwebgames.com and look under the events, I believe, and you can get that dial-in information there. So bear with me just a moment. I'm going to open up this conference line.
The pound or hash sign. If you are the host, press star now. Otherwise, please wait and you will be joined into the conference.
Okay, I'm going to do this in a minute. Okay, so bear with me while I get this set up. Okay, so We have the conference line open, and feel free to dial into that. Again, it is 115-0700, and please bear with me while I continue to get this set up. Again, if you have any questions, comments, you can email me, jcarpenter@desertblockchain.com, and you can follow us on Twitter. I believe it's Desert Block Hack, I think. You can go to desertblockchain.com, look at the bottom of the screen, bottom of the website, and connect to our Twitter accounts. So, and all this traffic noise will end once we move inside, which should be shortly. Hello.
Luis.
Hello. Who's this? Who's this? Hello. Who joined? Hey, Mark. How are you? It's Jay. Sorry about the noise here. I am waiting for Gangplank to open, and once Gangplank opens, I will head inside and we'll get rid of this traffic noise going on here. So sorry. How are you doing, Mark? Yeah, that's quite all right. It was kind of like a prototype event. So, how was the bagpipe festivities? How was the bagpipe festivities? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Cool. I think I can move into Gangplank now. So, give me just a moment. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to go over that. If you'll bear with me just a moment, I'm going to move inside. And let's see. What's the best way to do this so people don't get dizzy here? I would love to discuss that. So, thank you. How you doing? Hello. Hey, Lennox, do you mind just writing on the board here that the Desert Blockchain is in the blue conference room? And I don't know where there's... Hello. Cool. I don't know. The fellow that's walking around out there, that fellow, you might know. I think he's a Gangplank member. Right. We learned a lot out in Hayden. That's for sure. So, Lennox, you mind if I scoot over there? Thank you. No problem. I think, Mark, what I'll do is I'll put your paragraphs up on the Google Hangout and we can go over that if that works for you. It's just going to take a minute or two. Lennox, is there anything you'd like to go over in particular?
Yeah, like going. I didn't even understand like blockchain and itself a little bit more. Like I feel like I'm missing a few concepts of it.
Okay.
So I would like to go over that and like the application of it a little bit more as well.
Okay, because I've come across I've come across something that I think you'll be very, very interested in.
Okay.
So, which is something called Pop Chest. So if you go to popchest.com, it is a service that's designed to allow content providers like musicians to earn like micropayments.
Okay.
Is that something that'd be of interest to you?
Yeah.
So it's popchest.com. And I met the founder about a week ago today at the Silicon Valley Ethereum meetup. And just for everybody watching, it is popchest.com is a cryptocurrency, and I believe, I'm not quite sure what their involvement with blockchain is, but they are creating a service where content providers like musicians and anybody that would post something to YouTube or social media, you can post it to popchest.com and you can earn a micropayment or some small amount of money. So it is backed by Draper Venture Capital, and I believe they are based out of Santa Monica. So if anybody's interested in that that's watching, you can contact me, Jay Carpenter, and be happy to get you in contact with the founder and the folks behind that. So anyway, while we're kind of getting set up, I'll talk a little bit about the Silicon Valley Ethereum meetup, which was a week ago today. You can Google that. There was a presentation by Juan Bonet of IPFS, and he was talking about the new component to the IPFS protocol, which is called Filecoin, which is a way to earn money by storing other people's files on IPFS, or for you to pay someone to store your files permanently on IPFS. So that, I think, is very, very interesting. And I encourage you to follow along Filecoin. And I'm not quite sure what their timing is, but on launching that, but I would recommend you check that out. Okay, I'm going to be switching to... Hey, Mark, will you say something? Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, so far we have Linux, and is it Bamfield?
Yes.
Linux Bamfield, who's been with us at other Desert Blockchain events. And we have Mark Goldstein on the phone. And Mark, can you hear me? He might have dropped off. So, hey, Mark, are you with us? TV's not working.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes. Awesome.
Okay, sorry. There's some bad motor coding going on.
Uh-huh. Okay. So I'm going to pull up your text so we can kind of go through that.
Sure.
And I think it'd be good to discuss that. I think what I'll do is I'll copy these two paragraphs, Mark, and then just paste it on something like a Google Doc so that we don't disclose any email addresses or that sort of thing. Bear with me while I do that. This way we might be able to make some comments and so forth.
Jay, should we try hanging up and reinitiating the call?
I think we're almost there, Mark.
Okay, because there's still a lot of motor coding sound that I'm hearing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me take you off of speaker. I'm going to put you on the iPhone. And let's see if that... So that's better?
For me.
Okay, good.
And other people hear me.
I think so. I'm turning it up as loud as I can and putting it close to the microphone on the laptop. So sorry about that. And so let's just go through this. I'm gonna. Do you have a copy of your paragraphs, Mark?
Yeah, I have it open in Word, and it should probably match the version you're looking at.
Okay, awesome. So let me do a screen share. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So let me kind of cue this up. What we're talking about is we have Mark Goldstein, who's involved with the Arizona Technology Council, and also, which is part of its scope is to promote legislation, laws. Well, Mark, you want to kind of tee up the AZ Tech Council?
Sure. Thanks, Jay. So Mark Goldstein International Research Center, I'm a long-serving board and executive committee of the Tech Council. There's about 850 Arizona technology companies that are members across a spectrum of technologies, but including, financial services, anyone from PayPal and American Express to, people doing a variety of things, some of which directly intersect our interests, many of which do not. However, the Tech Council is a big technology public policy advocate and driver in the state for angel investment tax credit, for education, for all sorts of matters that we consider related to the technology ecosystem. So we have a history with the banking community that I felt we could leverage this year to seek state regulation, as several states have, North Carolina, Delaware, New Hampshire, and a couple of others. I have a tracking document elsewhere about that, to primarily look to relax money transmission regulation, which is the category of regulation that states apply, among other things, to banks, but the most relevant to blockchain and fintech would be somewhat onerous money transmission regulations. So the few states that are ahead of us have tried to relax those regulations for circumstances that would allow and encourage an entrepreneurial fintech environment, but still adequately protect consumers. A delicate balance for sure. They're not just gonna remove regulation, but it can be softened or made more malleable for non-traditional instruments and roles. So the Tech Council, I think this is the fourth year that we've published an extensive public policy guide split between federal issues and state issues. And then within the state, that's a broad range of issues, a couple of which I'll mention in a moment. This is like a 30-some-odd page document, half federal, half state. Usually we have several pieces of legislation, 3 to 5 pieces of legislation that we're developing or strongly supporting through the legislative session, which starts in January, usually around the 10th or 15th of January. We go into a 4 or 5 month legislative session. So Arizona is a conservative state, and some things are possible, some things proven practical. There's always a struggle with many legislative issues. The Tech Council employs a lobbying firm, public policy many other major corporations, legal firms, and others. We all sit on a public policy committee that meets twice a month. With that said, this year I'm introducing a state policy on financial technology. It started the conversation and will hopefully lead to supportable legislation. You generally develop that stuff in the fall, and get some legislator to sponsor it or start what's called a folder for it. And then when the session opens in January, it gets teed up for committee hearings or other consideration, or it's buried by the president of the Senate or speaker of the House if they don't. There's a lot of political meandering, and that's why they talk about legislation as how sausage is being made. So that said, I want to recap that the Tech Council has history with the banking community. So, for example, about 3 years ago, we drove crowdfunding legislation that lets venture capital gather in small amounts within a state. The SEC's never fully implemented national crowdsourcing regulations, even though the enabling legislation is there. So many states have a state version of the crowdsourcing regulation, allows in-state investment under reasonable circumstances. And last year we modified that to allow for a one-time sale of that asset. Usually your money's trapped within those investments until there's a liquidity event, and we soften that. So you can see these things get a little technical sometimes. We drove, which for Arizona, a conservative state, was hard, a Dodd-Frank banking exception that allows what they call small venture capital funds, 150 million or under, to be operated without much of the layers of onerous regulation of Dodd-Frank that took state action to exempt smaller venture capital funds. And this last year, surprisingly, there's a lot of patent trolling in the financial industry. There were some 60 lawsuits against Arizona financial institutions or branch offices or entities on financial patent issues, and we passed some legislation with the strong support and involvement of the banking community to relieve, to the extent practical, some of the patent trolling exposure they had. So those are examples of finance, and we do HO tax credits, R&D investment credits, all sorts of other tax-related things, but I wanted to give those as banking issues. So to start that going, hopefully have the 2 paragraphs in front of you where I tried to frame the issues in a brief way and tee up for legislation, hopefully to be developed in this fall based on some models and introduced in the new legislative session. And then generally things passed by the session go into effect the following July 1, the beginning of, a annual cycle. So anything we're shooting for, if we're successful, is likely effective next July 1. Okay, do you want me to read those paragraphs, or is the visibility of them sufficient?
Actually, I'd like you to go ahead and read the paragraphs, Mark. It is clearly displayed on the recording, the video recording, but I think it'd be really, really helpful if you went ahead and read the paragraphs, and then either Lennox or myself might jump in if we've got a question, or
Sure.
we can kind of take each paragraph one at a time. If that works for you.
Sure.
Okay.
And I studiously avoided technology terms, blockchain, distributed register, even I believe smart contracts. I tried to keep it at a level that encompasses those concepts without having to give them a glossary or have them gloss over themselves. So financial technology, in recent years, financial technology, fintech, firms have expanded their presence of products in the financial system, offering a diverse range of products and services that may be structured differently and have the potential of disruption for traditional financial services companies. These fintech innovations primarily rely on virtual currency, a digital representation of value used as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, or a store of value without legal tender status as recognized by the U.S. government. Now, I drew that definition from other more advanced efforts as kind of a formal definition of virtual currency as different from legal tender. Companies involved in virtual currency activities are multi-jurisdictional, meaning multi-state or multi-country by nature, and any artificial restraints on their ability to operate without regard to geographic boundary within the U.S. adversely impacts the significant cost effectiveness and efficiencies that their business models offer to other businesses and consumers. That's the first paragraph, Jay. If you want me to pause or let me know.
Yeah.
I should continue.
I'd like you to pause, Mark, and I am going to try this to connect again to this speaker that I've got here, hopefully with a little more success. Just a second. Okay, Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
The line is without the motorboating we were hearing before. So
Awesome. You sound much better to Linux and me, and hopefully it'll be a little clearer on the recording as well. So
okay, there is some motorboating starting again, but if you're not hearing it, that may be fine.
Let me turn this down just a little bit. I think it's the high volume. Is that a little better? No?
Yeah, there's some of it, but it's audible. You know, you're audible. So
Okay, perfect.
that's fine.
Okay. So do you want to just talk about this paragraph? Or shall we just review the whole thing and then go through paragraph?
So second and final paragraph. Although virtual currency can offer transactions that are more convenient, faster, and much less costly, state licensure and regulations aimed at traditional banking and financial services are often overly onerous and inhibit innovation and emerging business models. A number of states, such as Delaware and North Carolina, have undertaken to update their financial services definitions and money transmission regulations. Again, a banking-specific term, money transmission regulations, encouraging the growth of dynamic regional fintech ecosystems. The conference, the motorboating's pretty bad, guys.
Yeah. Hang on just a second. Let me.
Yeah.
I think it's a power issue. Did that make a difference?
Not really.
Must be some sort of electrical interference here. Is the background noise still bad?
Not as bad.
Okay.
Something is going. So, continuing mid-paragraph, the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, CSBS, has developed a draft model regulatory framework for state virtual currency regulatory regimes that Arizona should adapt and adopt, potentially including the creation of an on-ramp with exceptions to licensing rules for new companies based on low volumes and or limited business activities that pose a lower risk to consumers. And that on-ramp is something that most states haven't yet done, but it was kind of be a tiered level of regulation that would allow experimental things with very low consumer risk exposure to operate. Early, they might rise to the level where a medium tier of regulation, if you will, applies in the fintech environment, but it kind of looks for two lower tiers of regulation below the money transmission and other financial institution regulation that the state imposes today.
I think that's really, really awesome, Mark. I really think that exception path is, at least in my view, is the most viable path to create something that satisfies both sides of the scale, the regulatory concerns as well as the innovation concerns. So I really applaud.
And the third area of concern is how the banking community, who is tight with the Tech Council and more significant than the current alternative fintech community, takes to this concept. Their attorneys, so they become a player, not so much when we state a simple policy, but when we try to actually solidify around regulation, they will bring the lawyers to the table to converse with the Tech Council and each other. So that's also a bridge we'll have to cross.
Awesome. Why don't we go ahead and continue, and then I've got some points I'd like to go over with you about what the point that you just made about the incumbent banking community. So, or is that it?
Sorry, that's it. It's okay. Mercifully brief 2 paragraphs, which is consistent with the style in the policy guide, which is to give a little background, state the direction, and then leave it be, for actual action. When we go to action, we can refer back and say, here's where we said what we're interested in, why we're interested in it, and generally what we want to do. That's the purpose of this document.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my apologies. I had copied it twice, so that's why I thought there was more. But Lennox, do you have any comments or questions about this?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So, Mark, what would you say is the general climate, temperature, level of understanding that's out there among the Arizona regulatory ecosystem and legislatures and legislature and so forth? Do you have any?
It's probably low among the financial community in general, but you have players here who are significant, like PayPal, who certainly are going to have internal thinking and activities around virtual currency. They're not based here, but they have a significant presence. BP and PayPal just came on the board of the Tech Council. Her name's Leah Sweet, and I know her from when she worked as deputy CIO of the state. And there's, of course, some startup firms that aren't that successful or visible yet. Tim Brokey and you and others have some fintech activity, but you haven't risen to the level of a significant employee base and impact. So among the banking community, we're not London or New York, in those investment centers, but we have significant traditional banking. I would say they're probably early in their understanding
federal level, you know, we have Congressman David Schweiker.
Yeah, there's actually congressional stuff going on with the FTC, the Fair Trade Commission, which is consumer protection, with the SEC, with federal banking in Congress for hearings and reports, and there is certainly some understanding and appreciation at the federal level. I probably have to ask the Congress people I'm friendly with, Ruben Gallego and Kirsten Sinema, what they're seeing in that arena in the House. But there are significant federal legislative studying, if not enabling, going on right now.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead.
So this is all aimed at the banker right now, you know, so to make like new models, like get rid of new business models.
Well, here's, I think in summary, this new, what I call the crypto economy, is in many respects 180 degrees from some of the legacy legislation and regulations.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you, Jay.
Okay,
180 degrees.
I'm going to take you off the speaker, Mark.
Okay.
It's just not working out. There, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, okay, good. Sorry about that. I'll get a better speaker for next go round. But what I was saying, Mark, is that in my view, Jay Carpenter, what's emerging with the crypto economy, as I call it, which includes blockchain and distributed ledger and some of these new cryptocurrencies and all that stuff, is in many respects 180 degrees from where the legacy regulations exist.
Understand. Absolutely.
You would agree with that, right?
Well, I'm not 180. The consumer protection aspects are absolutely necessary. You'll never have legislation that just opens the barn door and says go what you want. You know, we saw that when we brought up crowdsourcing, crowdfunding legislation here. You'll always have significant consumer protection elements that some fintech companies may find constraints, but regulators are bound to protect consumers at their peril. So I wouldn't agree with 180, maybe 120 degrees.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I think within even the, you know, most ardent supporters of hands-off regulatory elements within the crypto economy community, I think there's a clear need, and there's an understanding that there's a need that for this to really scale up and become mainstream, there has to be some sort of innovation in the regulation and in the consumer protection and in the recourse that consumers might have. And I think that's one of the resistance points for the cryptocurrencies and the other elements that are associated with this whole movement. I think it's one of the areas of resistance that's holding this back from scaling up further and faster.
Agreed.
Okay. So there could very well be an opportunity to have, well, certainly what you're proposing here in these two paragraphs is the start of a conversation with the regulatory community, the innovation in the crypto economy community, and the incumbent financial community that's, you know, living within the legacy regulatory realm,
Right.
I think there's an opportunity to have what could very well be a fruitful conversation all the way around.
Oh, agreed. You know, we're relying on, there's a number of national public policy groups to really try to drive the federal regulatory conversation in ways that a state group would not have either the bandwidth and resources or interest in doing, which is why what you see here is focused on money transmission regulation, which is the state's response to banking regulation. It's not a broader enablement because that won't happen at the state level. So these two paragraphs aren't meant to be a be-all and end-all of regulatory reform. They're meant to be narrowly focused on what the state can and we hope should do.
Okay. So are there any particular parts of these two paragraphs that you'd like to focus on before I bring up the exception approach?
Only that I may be sorry that I'm referencing a specific draft regulatory model. I'm seeing some others, and I may make that sentence in the second paragraph less specific. In these there's about 2 weeks until this is locked down 100%. We consider it to be about 80 or 90% locked across the 30-page document. So there's a little room for final wordsmithing and tweaking. So from my perspective, I'm largely satisfied, except I'm considering anonymizing the discussion of model regulatory frameworks a little more and building a bit of a bibliography to which you've contributed some hits, and you know, we all see some hits. I need to have a kind of terse bibliography that says here's one article about New Hampshire and a link to the legislation, one article about North Carolina. You know, I need it's great that we send things back and forth to each other, we make them visible. I have to kind of distill about a half a page bibliography to give some pointers to the less familiar parties who were trying to engage in the conversations.
Okay, great. So I'd be happy to, you know, help you with that.
Great, appreciate it. You already have, you know, as we exchange, Steve, Tim, and I exchange some of this traffic. But I'll be glad to tie you in as I try to edit that up. Thank you.
Well, so what looks appealing to me out of this, Mark, is a way to basically hold, let's say, some of the primary actors within one of these crypto economy initiatives, basically identify them and then, you know, move the responsibility into their court. For example, let's say that I wanted to start up some sort of cryptocurrency service that might bleed into the money exchange regulatory realm.
Right.
So here's an example. Let's say that I wanted to start, you know, Jay's decentralized remittance operations. So if you, Linux, wanted to send money to, relatives in India, you could do this through my platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the service you provide.
What's that?
That's the service that you provide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a service that Jay's decentralized remittance blockchain would provide.
Okay.
And that would entail, if that was held up with the legacy regulations, there's all sorts of know your customer rules. There's all sorts of money laundering compliance to comply with. There are many things. There's Dodd-Frank possibly, which is a whole set of banking regulations. It's fairly new.
That's set in stone right now.
That's
okay.
Well, see, that's what all the incumbent banks comply with.
Yeah.
So when you open a bank account at your corner bank, they're making sure that you are who you say you are. They want to be able to.
That you have financial reserves and insurance backing up any deposits or transactions. There's all sorts of things you just can't put the money in your pocket and promise to deliver it. So, yes.
Yeah, and so I couldn't put my pop-up tent on the corner down here at Arizona Avenue and Chandler and say Jay's Bank is now open. Give me your money and you can trust me to hold it, and then I'm gone by 3 o'clock this afternoon. And that's all set up for the consumer to have some assurance that somebody holding themselves out as a bank is, going to be there.
Trusted party.
Trusted party. And, one of the problems with some of the cryptocurrencies is there is no customer service line you can call. If you lose the password to your bank account in the cryptocurrency realm, your money is gone. And that's an issue.
That's happened to me.
So we actually have a firsthand account of somebody losing some value through the cryptocurrencies. So, yeah. So it would have been nice when that happened that you would have had some sort of recourse, right? So that's kind of what I was hinting at in the some of the regulations that are in place now are there needs to be some sort of reconciliation between what's been in place and what is sort of emerging in terms of the innovation.
It seems like they're not adjusting fast enough.
Right.
Like they're not they're just not adjusting fast enough to the new technologies.
Right, which is always the case because it takes a while for the people to have experience in this realm to see what emerges and to have some cases to look at before you can actually craft something that's designed to address those.
I guess I see it like a trial and error right now.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't want to even touch the feel of it because they're we're seeing all this, people losing so much money, people getting hacked all the time. So it's all right, let's hold off on any decisions before we really try to go into it. So I see both sides of it. I see both sides of it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of what Mark is hinting at, and I think is very attractive, is a way for, let's say you and I wanted to do, Jay's decentralized remittance service. We might be able to go to at least the Arizona regulators and say, hey, we would like to set up this service. We'd like to apply for an exemption. And, it's basically going to be Jay and Linux. We're going to be responsible within certain parameters as to what happens via this service. So all of a sudden, we have skin in the game as the innovators, but we also have skin in the game in terms of the integrity of the service.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And Jay, I don't believe today's regulatory environment at the state level would have a process for accepting that. Thus, the whole concept here of relaxing money transmission for a category of fintech in general and allowing an on-ramp process for smaller experimental stuff, I don't believe there's anyone you could go to today. This suggests that maybe by July 1, 2017, there would be some framework for the consideration of exemptions.
I think that would be awesome. And I think
I think it would be like a new branch
yeah.
that's handling all that.
Yeah. And I think that could be attractive for the incumbent banking community as well, and financial community, because there seems to be a growing appetite among the incumbent banking and financial industry to experiment with this new decentralized and distributed ledger technology. And this might be a workable dividing line where they could set up subsidiaries or, work with startups and say, hey, we want to experiment in this, go get an exemption from this new department at the state of Arizona, and let's operate for a year or whatever and see what we can create. Is that
probably not a new department? That's probably not language you want to use.
okay?
The conservative governor and legislature. These are simply alternative or relaxed rules that will almost certainly be administered by existing departments.
That's perfect. I'm all in favor of keeping in place the departments that we have, and I misspoke, but there would at least be a new pathway.
Right, absolutely.
And so pathway.
I don't mean to charge you. It's just not good language with today's legislators to ever talk about creating new agencies.
Right. But the attraction of this whole proposal of going through an exemption is that you can experiment, you can innovate, you can foster the innovation without having to go back and re-engineer all the legacy frameworks, because that's pretty much not going to happen, at least in a time.
And you're also, the ecosystem can be more dynamic because every experiment doesn't have to meet current money transmission regulation, which, arguably might involve $1 million or more in legal fees and applications and process to cross a threshold, under those existing regulations.
Yep. I think that would be really, really awesome, and could put Arizona out in front of this entire wave. So, are there other states that are considering this exemption or hold harmless approach?
There are, but I don't know that any of them yet have the on-ramp and even lower tier. That has showed up. There's I can't remember, 3-letter acronym, some digital fintech coalition that is a policy group I have to bookmark, that has suggested the on-ramp concept. I don't think any of the states have yet entertained an even lower tier. So essentially you have today's state, you have all the federal regulations. We're leaving that off the table for an Arizona initiative. Need to work through national, coalitions on that primarily, or our own legislators, certainly. But that's not what this is aimed at. So this is aimed at the current onerous money transmission regulation at the state level to allow two tiers of subsidiary regulatory relief. One is which all the other states, 4, 5, 6 states, have kind of gone for. But then there's an even lower level I called an on-ramp that I saw one public policy group suggest and explain that I liked, that would really allow maybe your predictive market, concept could only involve 8 people at a maximum certain amount of money, waivers for individual responsibility or interest. That might all fit in the sense of an on-ramp process that when you wanted to scale it to 100 people or 1,000 people would fall in the mid-tier of regulatory regimen.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I'm not.
No one is doing the on-ramp level that I'm aware of. I've only seen it's discussed so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really exciting possibility and pathway.
Okay, so the on-ramp level is like below what the state level would be?
No, the state would be involved. It's just that you would be able to go in and basically say, we're going to be running something for the next year.
Yeah.
And it's J and Linux, and we're going to apply for this, assuming it's granted. Then there would be, we would basically be able to operate for a period of time and under certain conditions, but have a no action grant, let's say, for some of the existing regulations that are out there now. Okay. Mark,
proof of concept is probably a good term.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to scale your business under the on-ramp looser restrictions, but you would be able to go through a proof of concept phase, and then you probably would need to meet the mid-tier of regulatory stricture to scale into a more public offer.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So there's 2 things that I'd like to bring to your attention, Mark. Number one is, in the prediction market realm, there's a platform that's run by, I think it's called the Iowa Prediction Market or something to do with Iowa. Are you familiar with that at all?
I am not.
Okay. So this is like a university-run prediction market that has received from the Chicago Board of Trade a no action letter. So they went to the Chicago Board of Trade, or whatever the regulatory realm is that's appropriate for prediction markets, and they said, we would like to experiment with prediction markets. We're going to have a very small amount that people can place in the prediction market, like $25 or something like that. And they got what I believe is called a no action letter from the Chicago Board of Trade saying, hey, this Iowa prediction market can operate as long as they stay within these guidelines. They are effectively exempt from the existing commodities trading and all that stuff.
Right. Interesting.
So that could be something that is of interest, and I'll send you something. Yeah, it's kind of like a proof of concept. I'll send you something on that. And I'm gonna stop the screen sharing for just a moment, and I'm gonna pull up something else that might be of interest to you, Mark. on the Epicenter podcasts. Are you following that at all? The Epicenter podcast?
No.
Okay, so not the most recent. And I'm pulling it up so people can see it. And I'm going to go back to the screen sharing. So the podcast on epicenter.tv, it's called Alex Wearn, I believe it is, Wearn, Decentralized Capital and Government Currencies on Ethereum. During this podcast, they cover some of the regulatory issues that some of these innovative exchanges are grappling with. So they're actually trying to use fiat currency on the blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain, in conjunction, and they use an example of prediction markets, how if you participated in a prediction market, let's say 6 months ago, regarding the United States presidential election, who was going to be the winner, you've got two risks. Number one is your prediction market, is Hillary Clinton going to win or Donald Trump? That's one area of risk. But you also face a currency risk, or a cryptocurrency risk, because if you had participated using the Ethereum Ether, you would have suffered a loss simply in the decline of the price of Ether. So they're trying to buffer that with fiat currency, and here's some of the topics on the page is the regulatory environment of decentralized capital, and then their business model, and they
We'll push that to certainly.
Yeah,
I'll rise to the level of a federal issue versus a state issue, but I'm very interested nonetheless.
Yeah. So anyway, this is a key topic, in my view, for the entire initiative and innovation to move forward. And it actually goes beyond the federal level because it's an international issue.
Absolutely.
So cool.
So one thing I think is related in a way, not so directly, is I think we should, and I started a list of companies that I felt had received some venture capital or otherwise become visible, that if not a fintech pure play, or a fintech partial play, but I really think maybe we should undertake building a little directory or map of the Arizona ecosystem. Companies that are incorporated, that do exist, not just ideas, but actual companies that, have some product in the market or some employee base that can arguably be called wholly fintech or partially fintech. I think we need a little ecosystem map or directory to show what we have. If you followed Greg Head, has formerly of Infusionsoft, has got quite a little bit of press because he put together a public-facing directory of software firms, about 150 software firms, and keeps that up to date. And people come and say, "Well, I should be on that list," or "Here's a event where we took investment money," and he keeps a little consider some mutual effort in which we try to identify existing fintech players, as I say, either pure fintech or significantly influenced fintech component.
I agree. I'd be happy to host that on the desertblockchain.com site in a way that, you know, a certain portion like you and some others could actually update it directly using the slides.
For today, I don't know that we need to dive too deep in that one, but I wanted to put that out there and see that discussion.
Perfect. Awesome. Anything else?
Not for me. Glad to stay on and see what other conversations ensue. Hear your take on what happened in Hayden and where that leads and all that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen sharing, and I'm going to take a little break. So why don't we reconvene at 15 after the hour, 11:15, and then Lennox had some questions about blockchain in general. I can do an update on the decentralized web games, and okay, cool. So yeah, that'd be awesome. So I'm gonna take a little break, and then we'll be back in about 5 minutes. And I'm also gonna get another microphone so that we might be able to get better audio on this thing. Okay. Okay, I'm back. I did not bring my other microphones, so we will. I think the audio on this is actually fairly decent. So let me go back to screen sharing here. And we'll talk a little bit about the decentralized web games. So, Mark, did you have any questions specifically about the decentralized web games? Mark might be on mute or maybe he didn't come back yet. So we're at 11:14. So let's give it another minute.
This is Mark. I was out of the room warming my phone.
No problem. So here's a little, Mark, do you have any questions about the decentralized web games?
Well, just interested to hear your take on, your report on what did occur.
Well, it was a prototype event, and there was a lot that emerged out of taking on having this and staging it and actually going ahead and doing it even on a small scale. I'm pretty excited about the possibilities that are associated with this and some of the avenues that opened up out of planning it and actually having it on a small scale. But what happened when we actually got there in Hayden is that we had about 6 people that have actually participated, but we did not have the internet connectivity to live stream the event. I had tested the connectivity leading up to the event, and I thought we were going to have enough bandwidth to live stream, which is a critical part of it, and that did not happen. And some of the folks that were planning to experiment with the mesh networking and creating a link in the town from one point to another did not participate, or at least they weren't going to participate until the end of the day on Thursday. So I think, the next go round, which should happen in either January or maybe April, we will have more time to prepare and assure that we have internet connectivity sufficient to live stream the event, which in my view is critical, especially when we're talking about experimenting with prediction markets. So the knowledge base basically that I have now is much, much better. And I think we have a foundation to build the next set of events in the future. We did fly some drones. We took some videos. I haven't seen those videos yet. But the mesh networking, which a lot of people were excited about playing with, we really didn't get very far with that. So, you guys have any questions about that?
Yeah, what exactly is this? Because I've seen you post about it, but
yeah, that's the other thing is a lot of people didn't understand what this was.
Yeah,
and
I'm on that same boat.
Yeah. So the bottom line is the intention of the event is to be a sandbox. Okay. It's to be a sandbox where people can come in with these platforms and technologies and actually experiment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. A lot of people look at this and they go, oh, well, this is Burning Man for decentralized and distributed developers. And it certainly has the potential to morph into that. But we had this awesome event in San Francisco in early June called the Decentralized Web Summit.
Okay.
That was like 300 of what I consider to be the top people in the world that created the internet and that are creating what's next for the internet. But it was all kind of like workshops and talks and stuff like that. And there was very little, if any, hands-on. Let's take these awesome concepts and let's put them into the field and see what really works.
Okay.
So this was an initiative and an effort to do that.
Okay.
give the community a sandbox, and then grow from there. So you're not the first that said, well, I don't understand what this is.
Yeah.
So that falls on my shoulders to explain it better in the future.
Okay.
And I was hoping that we would have videos out of this thing that would
Start showing.
showing.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I think what we'll do is have some smaller events leading up to the next,
Yeah.
major
Big
event.
one, yeah.
Yeah, and actually do some examples, show some examples, short examples on video, so that people do understand what the opportunity is.
I would love to see that. I think that name by itself is completely different.
Doesn't describe what it is.
It does, but it makes you wonder like what exactly is this, and your mind starts going. Because I mean, decentralized in itself, and then what games? It's just, I like it.
You like it?
Yeah, I do
Okay.
like it.
Good. That's good feedback. Mark, you have any comments at this point? Might be on mute.
Sure. Mute. No, not offhand. Certainly be interested to see the videos for the drones and the activity, but nothing else at this time. Thank you.
Okay. I think, I took a risk in choosing the Hayden location because it does take an investment of time and travel to get there. And I think what we'll do next time is have something closer into Phoenix. We might still have it in Hayden, but run it in 2 locations, so that we know we've got good internet connectivity, and we can kind of take that off the table and basically be assured that we can stage some games and some events that give people a chance to innovate and have a sandbox to try some things. So
Great. Makes sense.
yeah. And the people that were signed up and chose to be involved had some awesome background in cybersecurity, in networking, in computer science, all of that. So it was successful in, even though it kind of came up on short notice and it required an investment in time and travel, it did attract some people that I consider to be, very talented in the realm of computer science, networking, and cybersecurity. So that's pretty much it for the web games.
Quick question on this: were you guys able to implement anything so far? I know you said you have video, but is it showing anything so far that you guys have done through this?
Not really.
Okay.
Let me step through a couple of things that are on the website in the events. So if you go to the events tab, there is, and I'm gonna. So this is. Let's start this. So this first screen shows an event in Europe called the electromagnetic field. And it's basically, they get about 1,000 people to camp out for 3 or 4 days. And they try all sorts of things like internet connections. They get into cybersecurity, all of that, all the things that we're interested in experimenting with. Well, here's some topics: high energy physics, lock picking, computer security, to crocheting, and then quadcopters to brewing. So that's it. It's a wide variety of things. It seems to be pretty popular, and it seems to be gaining some momentum. That's the electromagnetic field. And you can go to the decentralized web games, and there's links to click through and explore some of the videos and sessions that they had at the electronic field 2016. But that, to me, was encouraging because the concept has already been proven.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other, let me just skip to the games. So the games were designed to be around quadcopters and drones. And, I think there's a brand new, this is called the Mavic Pro. And this is really gaining a lot of attention and interest. DJI, which is the manufacturer, this is not even released yet. In fact, it'll be coming out in about another 2 or 3 weeks. But there's a huge amount of interest in this in terms of its capabilities and its compact form factor and all that. And you can see some of the pre-release demonstrations in these videos. This video by DJI regarding how drones are used in search and rescue, I think, is an excellent example of how this technology can be used to really be applied to some critical use cases and applications that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Then the other part that we can experiment with, which comes into play on that Mavic Pro, is what's called first-person view with drones, where you put on these goggles and basically you're seeing exactly what the drone is seeing. And the Mavic Pro is will be able to, not only will you be able to see what's the drone sees through these goggles, but you'll also be able to post it on Facebook and live stream on the internet.
Okay.
So I think that's, yeah, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And that kind of dovetails with the prediction markets, where you can set up courses and games and so forth, have different players with the drones test out different strategies, and basically the people from anywhere in the world can be watching this and then participating in the prediction market.
Okay, so the prediction market side of it would be like sort of like,
well, it's betting.
Betting,
it's betting.
Creation of things, yeah. Okay.
But it's betting with the intention of bringing forth crowd-sourced information that gives a better prediction of what's actually going to happen.
Okay.
It's a better prediction of what's going to happen than if you got some experts together.
Gotcha.
So anyway, and it's different in, in traditional betting markets, you've got odds makers. So they're making the market, they're setting the odds. In a prediction market, it's the people participating in the prediction market that are actually setting the probabilities as to what's going to happen. And they've got, some sort of value on the line. Now, the prediction markets can be run with points and so forth, but if you really don't have any skin in the game, as they call it, then it's not as true a test of what people really believe is going to happen.
Too many remotes.
Exactly. So, and that's completely different than voting. So Robin Hanson, who was actually in town on Thursday night and delivering a lecture at ASU, who's one of the leading economists in these prediction markets,
Okay.
He's come up with a saying called, vote your values, but bet your beliefs. So in the presidential election, you might be interested in, let's say, from my point of view, I'm a libertarian. I would like to see Gary Johnson be the presidential winner. So I will probably vote for Gary Johnson. But if I was to bet my money, I would not bet that Gary Johnson is going to win the election. So that's an example of where I would vote my values, but I would bet my beliefs. And that's a distinction between these prediction markets and voting. You could get people to vote on all kinds of things, but you're really not going to see what their beliefs are, what they believe will really happen until they have some sort of value in the line. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So cool. Mark, you have any comments or questions about that? He's on mute again.
No, I'm just listening with interest.
Okay. So this is still in the events tab of decentralized web games. And that shows we did have Flight Factory participate, and Dustin Pennington, who's the one of the principals at Flight Factory, brought a bunch of drones, and he brought kits so that people that were there could actually build their own drone. And I think that's a really interesting dimension to future decentralized web games, where you could start off the event building your own drone, and then we could have some opportunities for people to fly the drones and so forth. One of the things that I ran up against is that the insurance carriers did not like the idea of camping overnight, and they did not like the idea of the drones. So I'll have more time to work on getting liability insurance for the next one, but that was definitely an issue with this event that you really wouldn't know until you would attempt this type of event. And that's Flight Factory. In the mesh network realm, we did not, but we intended to experiment with IPFS. This time last Saturday, there was a group of 4 of us that were sitting in the Visa headquarters in Silicon Valley, listening to Juan Bennett of IPFS give a presentation on where they're going with Filecoin, which is their cryptocurrency for creating like IPFS is sort of like a Dropbox, but a decentralized and distributed storage mechanism for content.
Did you say that one more time?
So IPFS is it's a different approach to many things.
Okay.
But so you can actually store content. Let's say you had a video of a band.
Okay.
You could actually put that video within the IPFS network. It would be cryptographically secured, so that if there was even one bit that was changed, it'd have a whole new address.
Okay. And each time it does that, right?
Well, each time you change the content and reload it into IPFS, you get a completely different, it's called a public key.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
But if you wanted to hold it, make sure that everybody had access to it, even if your computer was off, you would need some sort of incentive for me to host that content, let's say within the IPFS.
To make it shareable.
To make it shareable, right, and to make it permanent, give it some permanence. So IPFS is coming out with something called Filecoin, where let's say you as a content provider could pay somebody else to keep that content online. Or if you wanted to be a host, you could actually create your own little business or big business where you're hosting other people's content and they pay you the Filecoin. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So Juan Bennett was talking about that. Page nodes is something that's emerged out of this community. ICE Dev has created Page Notes, which is a really cool, easy to use web interface for the Internet of Things and connecting things. And they also have a way to create mesh networks, I'm told by Louis Montez.
I'm currently taking a class on IoT.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome. You should definitely look at Page Notes.
Okay.
And if you're interested in meeting the people that are writing it, they get together at something called Coffee and Code every Thursday, just about in Central Phoenix. Okay. Usually it's at First Draft, so you could stop by there late morning to early afternoon, come meet the folks. But what I wanted to get into is prediction markets, and what I've found is that people are, this is the slide that I really want to emphasize, is how prediction markets can be used for a new approach to cybersecurity. So Robin Hanson, again, who's an economist with George Mason University, is part of this video, and again, he's one of the leading figures around prediction markets. But he and his colleagues were associated with something called SciCast. And in this video, about 10.5 minutes into it, one of the colleagues of Robin Hanson at SciCast talks about how you can apply prediction markets to cybersecurity. And I won't go into that, but Arizona has the intention of creating a cybersecurity focal point here, having this be one of the premier cybersecurity communities and hubs. And I think that prediction markets, and this kind of harkens back to the financial technologies, because there needs to be a pathway or an on-ramp for these prediction markets to actually operate and innovate. But it's my view that prediction markets are probably one of the most promising areas to really, really enhance cybersecurity. So let me continue. Mark, you have any comments or thoughts about that?
Only that ASU at SkySong is developing their own sandbox in the new Building 4 that's not yet occupied. And a sandbox is kind of a isolated security operations center where people can bring up live environments. Certainly there's stuff like that at the cybersecurity range out in the East Valley. But ASU will seek to host branch offices for computer security companies right there in the building around their sandbox. So I spent all day about a week ago at a cybersecurity event at ASU that featured their research, and they are an active player and will have a nexus of cybersecurity around the SkySong facility going forward.
Cool. And that's when I was in San Francisco. So overall, how would you say that because that was their sort of their initial or inaugural event to kick off their cybersecurity?
Actually, I think it was the second annual for this particular event that came out of a computer forensic group there. But they have about 100 identified faculty that are working on cybersecurity related research. It may not be their sole focus, but there are about 100 faculty to some extent involved in cybersecurity research.
Awesome. All right. So continuing in the events, I did connect with one of the founders of Gnosis. His name is Martin Kopelman, and he was actually one of the co-hosts or co-organizers of the Silicon Valley Ethereum meetup. So I actually met him in person on Saturday, the 22nd of October. We had a conversation leading up to the decentralized web games, and they were agreeable, and they might have done it. I haven't followed up, but they were going to set up a prediction market that could have tracked some of the events at the decentralized web games. So they are about to launch their token sale, I believe, and the other prediction. So Gnosis and Augur, this is Augur, are the two leading prediction markets within the cryptocurrency, crypto economy realm. Augur it was either October 4th or the 8th, actually launched their token sale. And I think the value of their tokens went up to over $100 million. And currently it's, last I checked a day or two, the token's total value, total market cap was around 55 million. So, settled down quite a bit. But Augur is actually up and running. Robin Hanson, who I mentioned, is an advisor to Augur. And both Robin Hanson as well as Joey Krug of Augur were at the Money 2020 conference in Las Vegas last week. I think they presented on the 26th of October, and I haven't seen or heard how their presentation went, but the financial community is starting to look at prediction markets. And prediction markets are different than predictive analytics. One of the things that I'm finding is that when I say prediction markets, people are thinking of predictive analytics, and they're totally different. Predictive analytics is taking a set of large data, doing calculations on that, and then trying to come up with some sort of prediction of the future off of that. Prediction markets are asking a crowd or a community to actually make predictions as to what's going to happen, but that community actually has skin in the game. So they actually have something at risk of value. And that it's considerably different.
So right now, I could just say something's coming up.
Yep.
Months from now, I could just go place and just move that bet.
Yep. Okay. You could go on Augur today and create a prediction market for, let's say, I don't know, will Tesla come out with a new model? Yeah. But not only will Tesla come out with a new model, let's say Tesla's already announced a new model. Let's say they've announced they're going to build a motorcycle. Okay, and this is totally made up. But if Elon Musk came out and said, we're going to create the first Tesla motorcycle, it's going to be electric powered, and we're going to have it out by January of 2018. You could create a prediction market to ask people to place value on whether or not Tesla would be able to meet that deadline. Because, and the research shows that you're going to get a better answer than if you went out and you asked the automotive industry or the motorcycle industry or whatever. That you're going to get a real view of what's the likelihood that Tesla could produce an electric motorcycle by January 2018. They might do it, but it might take them till the year 2020. So that's the type of prediction and analysis and sort of like taking the temperature of the community, the real temperature of the community, that a prediction market could do. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So you can set up pretty much any question on Augur, and you know, in the security realm, you know, you could say, okay, is there going to be a data breach of a major company in the month of December 2016, where more than, you know, 1 million private records will be exposed. You create that. And then the cool thing about Augur is you could actually be, through their reputation coins, you could be one of the people that looks at what happens and then says to the market, yes, this happened, or no, it didn't happen. So it's sort of like being a judge or a reporter or an oracle that, and you would actually earn fees for saying that yes, it happened or no, it didn't. And that's how they settle these predictions. And so they are encouraging a group of people to start to become these reporters or oracles or sources of truth as to what really happened. And as you participate, you start to build your reputation. That, you know, Linux said that, you know, this happened and nobody disputed it. Or if it was disputed, Linux's view of what the truth is and the reality survived. So as you build up your reputation as an oracle or a reporter, you could actually earn more and more fees. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Mark, you have any questions or comments about that?
No, followed it. I am going to have to break. We're going out for lunch. So,
Yeah.
Thanks for seeing this morning, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about the public policy stuff.
Very cool. Well, it's all recorded, Mark, and it's on the YouTube channel at desertblockchain.com. And, you know, feel free to download it, edit it, whatever you'd like to do. I think we covered some pretty good ground. And there is some material on the decentralizedwebgames.com that talks about prediction markets and does a little bit of educational information there. So,
cool.
Yeah, we're gonna
send me the follow-up on that Iowa market you mentioned.
I'll send you.
Have a chance.
I'll send you the Iowa. I'll send you the epicenter.tv, and
Right.
I think, was there anything else that I promised?
No, those were the two.
Okay.
Thanks, Guy.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Mark. Bye. So here are some, you know, some of those events. The electromagnetic field camp. You can check that out. The other event is called the Chaos Communications Camp, and they actually get about 4,500 people showing up to this. And that's a view of the Chaos Communications Camp from 2015, and you can see it's a pretty elaborate endeavor, and that's, you know, another view of their nighttime activities. So that's pretty much it. That's under the events tab at Decentralized Web Games. And let's see, what else? I think that's about it. So do you want to, we've got about, I proposed a break at, let's see, we've got about 12 minutes. Do you want to go over your questions about the blockchain
Yeah,
at this point. I'm gonna.
I would like to gain like a better understanding.
Okay. Let's stop. Okay. I'm gonna twist this a little bit so that we can maybe use the blackboard or the whiteboard. We can grab a marker. Let's see if this will work. Okay. Unfortunately, that's not showing up on the video, but we'll go through it. So, we've talked about the blockchain in the past.
Yeah.
And you'd like to go into that a little bit deeper.
Yes.
So, do you want me to just kind of go over a general?
Yes.
Okay.
And as they go on, like, I'll ask questions.
Okay.
Because that'll really help.
Okay.
Because I know, as of right now, I know it's a public ledger.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, and it's open. So whatever transaction gets placed on it, like it's visible to anyone that do it.
Right.
One of my questions is like, how exactly is it getting placed on here?
Okay.
That's like, yeah, like how is it getting placed on there? Like how is it able to just be like open? I know, I guess the new technology of it, it's like allowing that, but like I'm still trying to understand that. Like grasp that entire concept now.
Okay. Cool. All right. So, let's take a car, for example. Do you own your car? Okay.
Yeah. Use an example, yes.
So,
Okay.
So, let's take, you're familiar with a motor vehicle department, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's the Arizona State Motor Vehicle Department. And when I bought my car, call it Jay's car, part of the process was I paid in money, right? And I got a title. And it's the motor vehicle department that basically registered that title.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's say I want to sell that car to you. Part of that process would be moving it from Jay's car to L-E-N-N Linux.
Yes.
Is
L-E-N-N, yes. OX.
IX.
OX.
OS.
Yeah.
So to transfer this car from Jay's car to Linux's car, we not only exchange money, or you pay me the money, but I give you the title. Okay.
Yes.
And you can think of that like the distributed ledger. Okay. So you would give me this, the money, and I would give you the title. Okay. And that transaction is basically effectively like a ledger. Only who's certifying the truth of that is the motor vehicle department. Because if I drive up in a car and I say, I want to sell you this car, you are relying upon the motor vehicle department to say, yes, this is Jay's car, here's this piece of paper, hasn't been forged, and so forth. Same thing happens in the blockchain, okay? But instead of it being this centralized, this is centralized, okay? You got to rely upon that. This is decentralized. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means you've got people all over the world. Let's say this is the world. Here's the United States. Here's South America. So this is the world. You've got people all over the world that are looking at this transaction, and they are competing to validate that transaction through what's called proof of work, okay, with the Bitcoin blockchain. So you might have Mike over here and Sally over here and all of them. They, through this peer-to-peer network, you know, everybody's looking at the same information, okay? So they are trying to reach consensus to say, hey, A, Jay owns this car, and B, Linux and Jay are entering into an agreement to trade this car. But instead of a car, it's actually like Bitcoin. Okay. So or Ethereum or whatever. Yeah. Or it could be the right to listen to music. Okay. So you could get a token. It's like dropping a token, like a nickel or whatever, in the jukebox, and all of a sudden you can play that tune. Okay. But this transaction, instead of having a centralized authority like the motor vehicle department say, yes, this is valid, you've got this decentralized community of people that have a set of incentives to validate that transaction and come to consensus to say that this is correct. So what questions do you have out of that?
Coming to the consensus, because now I understand that part. So it's taking out that centralized party. Now we're decentralized. There's no party. Like
there's no one party.
Yeah. Like there's no control of it like that.
Right.
So coming back, how are they agreeing on it? Like what? Yeah, how are they able to just agree on that transaction happened?
Well, because they can all see this blockchain, which is like a block, and this block contains this transaction, but it contains a bunch of transactions. Okay, it might contain, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, whatever other transactions. This is called a block. So they take all these transactions, and maybe it's me buying a cup of coffee, maybe it's us, somebody else,
anything,
like a car or whatever. So all that's packaged up into a block. Now all these people are looking at all these transactions, and they can see the entire history, and they can independently, they're all doing like a calculation saying, yes, all these transactions match up, or they'll throw this one out and say, no, somebody's trying to double spend here. Okay. Anyway, every 10 minutes, the system, or all these people talking to one another, come to a consensus via proof of work. And that is because they're all trying to crack this code. So, but let's not get into the proof of work or proof of stake, all that stuff. Just the bare bones basic is there's a whole bunch of transactions that are bundled together in what's called a block.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a whole bunch of people anywhere in the world that can have a connection to the network, they're all looking at this list of transactions, and they're all going through each transaction one by one, and they're saying, yes, Jay had the car, he's selling it to Linux, that's a valid transaction. Okay. Or Mike went to the Starbucks, and yes, he had enough Bitcoin to pay for his coffee. So if he didn't have it, then that transaction would be kicked out. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And it's all decentralized, and all these people are validating that, but only one of the validators gets the reward, which is 12.5 Bitcoin. So, which is around $8,000, I think, right? $8,000 or $9,000. Okay. So if you can crack that, if you can come up with the solution to that mathematical puzzle to prove that you've done the work and that you're trustworthy, you spent the electricity to do that, and you're the winner, then it translates into $8,000 or $9,000. Wow. Plus, there's fees for each one of these transactions, but the fees are small compared to the mining reward, which is 12.5. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay. Now my question is, so the blockchain, like for a Bitcoin blockchain, for them to be able to validate that, how would it?
They're all looking at this public ledger.
Yeah, but like I was about to get at, like, since it's only a block, it's the Bitcoin blockchain.
Mhm.
I guess the double spender aspect of it is like, okay, the public key.
Mhm.
Like, why is that like really that special?
It's like the cryptographic identity.
Okay.
Okay.
To that Bitcoin.
To that transaction.
Okay.
Okay. So you can create as many public keys as you wanted to. You can create a public key for each transaction.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you can use the same public key to do multiple transactions.
Okay.
That public key is, you can think of it like a really long social security. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's kind of like, it's not only your identifier, but it's also your account. It's like an account number and an identifier all rolled together. But it's synonymous, meaning that it's like an alias. If I got into this, it's sort of like if you get on, a chat platform or whatever. You might call yourself Linux, but you might call yourself, Gangplank follower.
Yeah.
So you kind of create this temporary identity.
It's private and it's public.
Right. Well, the private key is sort of like your password to your bank account. You keep that secret, but when you log into the bank account, you're gonna use your identifier, your email address or whatever. But the key to unlock it, you keep your password secret. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So all these transactions have a public-private key associated with them. All the people that are in the community are looking at these transactions. They're not looking at them. They got a mathematical, they got a computer program that's part of the mining rig that's looking at all this stuff. And validate.
That's what I'm like wow about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something, it's like, if you're really not looking at that, you have something running that, that's
crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's like the part that I'm like missing out of it. Like,
yeah, it's just a program.
Yeah.
It's just a program that's designed to look at all the history transaction, make sure that there's no double spending, and then crack this mathematical puzzle.
Saying that was real.
And that was real. Okay. And what's happened is, in China, most of the mining, let's say this is very poor representation of this is Africa, this is Europe and Asia. But in China, most of the mining is happening right there. And they have more computing power than Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, everything combined. The computing power, but it's all completely designed to be, all it does is one thing, and that's it. And it does it as fast as possible. Yeah. It's completely special purpose. And they're burning huge amounts of electricity to do this mining, to do this verification, and win the race to be as fast as possible. Because there's a lot of money.
So in the beginning, that was like the best time to anybody could do it.
Yeah, there's some people that frequent Gangplank that were doing Bitcoin mining.
Wow.
And you could do it on a laptop or whatever, but not anymore.
I remember the first time I heard about the concept of Bitcoin. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I saw the guys buy pizza for $10,000.
You're right. That'd be worth like $6 million. That was like a $6 million pizza. So, yeah. So yeah, it's completely crazy, but it's the thing is, it's moving from everybody looking at, some central authority to everybody looking at everybody else. That's huge. So these people that are doing the mining, the validation, they can hate each other. You can have people on any part of the planet that if they were to meet in person, there might be violence. And yet they're coming to consensus. They're coming to a community-derived source of truth every 10 minutes.
And what gives them that is the reward that they can read about.
The reward is part of it, but it's basically solving this mathematical puzzle. So the assumption is if you've spent the electricity to solve this mathematical puzzle, then it's probably true. Because if you spend that electricity and you've invested in all this hardware and everything else, and if it's not true, let's say you say, yes, this is true, but in fact there was a block or there was a transaction in there that was not valid, you don't get that reward.
So the next person that said no,
Yeah.
it wasn't, no, they get that.
Yeah.
They did it a little faster. Okay.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So there's an economic incentive to validate what's really true.
And that's why there's so many parties trying to do it.
Yeah. And if you try to cheat it, it would cost you a lot of money. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay, I understand that a lot better. Now coming back to double spending, how is that? How does that work? Exactly.
Well, the problem up until the Bitcoin blockchain, the problem has been double spend. So it's sort of like if you wrote me a check to pay for my car. I'm going to sell you my car, you're going to write me a check. But then at the same time, or if I write you a check, you got your car, I write you a check, and I say, okay, Lennox, here's a check for your car. You think, okay, well, the check's good. But then at the same time, I'm taking another check that looks just like that same check, and I'm selling it to Mark, or I'm buying his car at the same time. That's called a double spend.
Okay, so that check with the same numbers, so you have two of those.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the double spending.
Exactly. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So, and it wouldn't just be a double. It could be, I could be trying to do that infinitely.
So how are you able to do that? How are they able to do that?
Well, because all these people that are doing the mining and the validation, they can see the entire ledger. So they know that, okay, Jay got 10,000 Bitcoin, 6 months ago, and he still has 5,000 Bitcoin left in his account. and he has enough Bitcoin to buy Linux's car. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because we come to, maybe 100 Bitcoin to buy your car.
Yeah.
So that's what that program in each of the mining rigs is doing.
So it has to run through every single. Wow. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. But the big part of the computing power is solving that mathematical problem. Because the mathematical problem can change in terms of how hard it is to solve it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But what is going on? What's changing it? What's like have that effect?
It's all built into
Whatever.
the Bitcoin core blockchain and the platform. So the program that all these peers are talking with back and forth has all that logic built into it to adjust the difficulty of the mathematical problem, to look at, okay, here's all the transactions, and you've got to validate all these transactions that are in the block in order to get the reward. And if you make a mistake or you're trying to cheat the system, you don't get the reward. Right. And then the reason they call it a blockchain is because, there's another block all the way down to what's called the Genesis block, which was the very first block that the originator of Bitcoin, Satoshi, did what's called the Genesis block, which is the first block. So this one goes to this one, goes to this one, and over time, this long chain of transactions becomes theoretically immutable. You can't change it. Right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, huh?
Yeah, it is. And that person just made that.
Well, this is a collection of thoughts and problems, and there's been a lot of people that have been trying to do this, but the white paper that the pen named Satoshi Nakamoto wrote in 2008 or 2009, that 11 or 12 white paper, cobbled together a bunch of things that people had been working on and applied this proof of work in a way that it was finally workable. That was the revolution. And now people are trying to get away from this proof of work because of all this computing power that's, it's getting back to a centralized source. There's only about 4 or 5 big miners now. So what started as decentralized is moving back to centralized. But they're trying to get away from the proof of work and get into proof of stake. Right. Which means that, I've got something of value that I could lose if I try to cheat the system.
So what is
sort of like a deposit?
Yeah. So what does that do to it? It's like what we just spoke about. Predicting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah,
so
you got
value. Yeah.
It's all built upon incentives, economic money incentives, and other incentives. But basically, this whole community, be it Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever, they all have skin in the game. Does that make sense?
This is good. All right, so there's two things I'm looking at it to help me understand that better. What are they putting in exactly?
What's the community putting in?
Yeah.
The miners?
Yeah.
The miners are putting in computer hardware. The software is all open source, but they do try to modify it. And they're putting in electricity. Okay. So it's like they're trading electricity Yeah, for the Bitcoin.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
That's their
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing about China is there's abundant sources of electricity that can kind of be appropriated for this purpose because of the way the Chinese infrastructure is made. But if you could find like a new solar cell that you could put out and it would produce electricity that's cheaper than what these guys can get in China, all of a sudden you could take over Bitcoin. If you could figure out a way to convert like sunlight into electricity and you wanted to do Bitcoin mining, you could start to dominate the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah. So my name.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I just saw recently a marine company, a shipping company
Mm-hmm.
out of the UK and the US, just had the first like public blockchain transaction like that.
Yeah.
With no one involved, and they're like smart contracts, and they're so cleanly done.
Mm-hmm.
Like had no parties to worry about. Transaction was just beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, damn.
Well, in the epicenter.tv, the latest episode, a guy named Greg Maxwell, he worked at Microsoft. And one of the problems he was working on was doing supply chain software, which is kind of like the marine application where you have to keep track of goods and shipping and all that stuff. That's part of like the whole supply chain problem. That's a big, big problem. And if you can come up with a better way to do it, there's a lot of people that would pay a lot of money to do that. So if it's faster, if it's cheaper, if it's more accurate, if it's decentralized, so there's a greater reliance and greater confidence in the truth of it, that's a big problem.
So, okay, going back to centralized and decentralized. With the centralized parties, a huge problem I'm saying is that there's the possibility of corruption.
Yep.
That there's
correct. Yeah. So the Bitcoin today has what's called a market cap. If you took all the Bitcoin that's out there and you applied the price, which is about $680 a Bitcoin, it would have a market capitalization of about $10.8 billion. Okay, that is like a bounty. So if you could find a way to crack into that whole ecosystem, the software and the hardware and the mining or whatever, and you could find a flaw with it, you could basically walk away with $10.8 billion. Okay? Now, that being said, since 2009, that bounty has not been taken off the table. So that's giving, with each passing day, it gives people more and more assurance that the Bitcoin software and the Bitcoin ecosystem is pretty strong. Okay? The motor vehicle department, day after day, we're hearing about data breaches. Even the NSA, the federal government had like 30 or 40 million personnel records breached. So it's not only when you're in a centralized construct, it's not only that somebody within that centralized organization might go bad on you, it's also the possibility of somebody from the outside breaking in and then doing things that are, yes, that breaks the trust and the integrity of that centralized repository of information and data so forth. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So does that open up some new dimensions of this whole conversation?
Yes. Yeah. Because like, say I wanted to have my own blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Which you could do.
Yeah, like, it could be from the smallest item
Mm-hmm.
to the largest item. But I guess like how is that getting value? Like if I'm collecting fiat currency for that,
Mm-hmm.
like what am I giving them back? Like,
You're giving them back this this digital currency.
okay,
Okay. So if I laid a $20 bill on the table,
you wanted to buy like this.
well, then I would just buy it with the $20 bill.
Yeah,
But if let's say that's a digital currency instead of a water bottle, I would put the $20 bill there, and you would give me a code basically that represents that digital currency,
very good to
right? Based upon the price of whatever that digital currency is trading at.
so it's at negative.
Well, you would have to build a platform and a case and have some sort of likely, use that would move people to trade their dollars for those tokens. Okay, sort of like Augur said, okay, we're going to create this prediction market. We're going to sell these tokens that people can use in the prediction market. It's sort of like buying minutes for a prepaid phone card, okay, or buying, your lift ticket in advance for Vail or Aspen or whatever. Some people will put up $100, $150 and say, okay, I want a lift ticket that'll last me for the entire 2017 season. And that price changes depending on where you're at in the season, right?
Yeah.
Same thing here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Any other questions?
I guess the proof of stake one, since that's what it's trying to move to.
So the proof of stake is like when you put a deposit down on something.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say there's one of those Mavic Pros coming out, and it's going to be a really hot item.
Yeah.
Like, there's only going to be 1,000 Mavic Pros, that quadcopter. And DJI, the company that's making them, might say, okay, it's going to be $1,000 quadcopter, but if you want to be first in line to get it, you got to pay $50, which is a non-refundable deposit. Okay. Then you put your $50 in, you get your place in line. But if you end up not buying that quadcopter, you lose that $50.
That's it. So like,
That's
back to the electricity.
right. That's the proof of stake. It's like,
Stake is incentive.
yeah, think of it as it's like a deposit that you put up. But if you do something that's outside the rules and regulations, you can lose that deposit.
I think what it comes back to for me right now is that it's a lot of new terminology.
Yeah.
So like, I just gotta like get. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
I think this is like.
It's like the introduction to the internet.
Yeah.
Everybody used to go, well, I can make a phone call.
Yeah.
If I want to talk to Linux, I'll call them on the phone. And, I went through this because a lot of people were saying, well, what good is this email thing, the internet? But until they actually experienced it, you really couldn't describe it to get your arms around it. You really have to get involved, go out and get some Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever.
Yeah, I bought some Bitcoin and my phone got to reset it. I lost all of it.
Oh, wow.
And it was like the valuation of it just kept going up too. So it was like I spent a certain amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it just being like, oh yeah, I spent all of it, it just kept going up, so it surpassed what I had.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like,
Yeah.
so that's
You put in $100, and then the next thing you know, it's worth $10,000.
yeah,
It's like, wow.
yeah,
But and you might have even spent 50 of that original 100, and you've still got $5 grand.
yeah.
It's like, wow. And that actually, you know, those kind of scenarios happen. So does that give you have any other questions about this?
At the moment, I think I understand it a lot better.
Okay.
Just like it's the incentive that comes back from anybody, but for the miners, it's electricity, the power that they put in. Because they have to pay for electricity.
Yeah.
So that's what comes back to monetarily.
Yeah.
Centralized system, like, it's not even worth having it anymore. It's a lot of
Well, suffice it to say that there's some sort of, let's say, balancing act going on between centralized and decentralized. And it's not a complete solution to have a completely decentralized ecosystem, and it's not a complete solution, or there are problems with centralized solutions. And this kind of circles back to cybersecurity. As we continue to have this breach after breach, the decentralized starts to look a lot more attractive.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So we're going to wrap it up. I will probably open up the conference line at 1 o'clock, but I got some calls during this that I think I'm going to have to attend to. So I think we're going to probably shut it down for the day.
I mean, I think one thing I would ask, so every book that you could recommend in Glasgow's topic.
Yeah.
Allow me to have all of that.
I'm going to show you a book right now. This is a little bit technical, but it's called, I'll show it. It's called Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos. It's by O'Reilly, and it's called Unlocking Digital Cryptocurrencies. I think this is the, most people would consider this the book to read to get started with blockchain, cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. There's a lot of technology in here. I would just read through it, and you might want to just take a picture of that with your phone.
Yeah, if I plug it out, it'll die right now. Like, I'm ready to get before that.
All right, so but basically, Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos, and then The New Economy, I think it's called Blockchain, The New Economy, by Melanie Swan.
We heard this spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
oh my God.
She gets into the philosophy of it a lot.
Like, there's so much happening. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, but I've been through this before with the internet, and I really acknowledge you for having an interest in this, because you had an opportunity to innovate or find some area of this whole movement and create something extraordinary for yourself, your family. So, trying to. Cool. And not only yourself and your family, but everybody. Okay. Cool.
Definitely will read that.
All right. Let's see. It's almost 12:30. I am going to take about a 30-minute break. If I can, I'll restart the hangout at 1 o'clock Arizona time and open up the conference bridge, and then we might have another session in the afternoon, but if nobody's here at Gangplank or nobody's on the conference bridge, then we'll wrap it up for the day. So thank you very much. This is the day-long event in place of the mini conference and Hack Attack, which happens on the last Wednesday of 3 months from now, which would be at the end of January, whatever the last Saturday at the end of January. So I think that will be January 28th, so 2017. So stay tuned at desertblockchain.com. Also follow along. The sites are linked now, but decentralized web games. Appreciate your time and attention. And please feel free to contact me, Jay Carpenter, at desertblockchain.com if you have any questions. Thanks for your time and attention.